Hey everyone, there's nothing to talk about today, so enjoy your day. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.
Oh Jesus, would you stop?
Mike's off the pre-show. It's fine.
Go ahead, Rob.
All right. One thing, because we were talking about
Mike, you're particularly ornery today. I was just kidding.
No. On my usual pain in the ass.
I like the gag. The gag was good.
I thought it was funny. I thought it was being silly. I mean, of course we're here.
It was good.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. So, okay, I'll start with the Sopranos thing first, then the gas thing. David Chase, who's the creator of the Sopranos, and I thought he did this a couple years ago, but he came out definitively and said that at the end of the Sopranos, when they're sitting in the restaurant and Tony and Carmela and the kids are eating at a pizza place and they're playing Don't Stop Believin', which ruined a decent Journey song to the point that I can't stand it anymore. That when they faded to black, that meant Tony and presumably the family were killed. Now, I don't believe this. I think it's bullshit. And the reason I think it's bullshit is because James Gandolfini died. If James Gandolfini had not died, I think there would have been a Soprano movie. But because he died and they wanted to put this to bed, David Chase retrospectively said, "Oh yeah, the Tony Soprano was killed." There's no way that Tony Soprano was killed if James Gandolfini was still alive.
No, I disagree, Mike. Not only do I feel like they were dead, that was my wish. My wish was that they were all gunned down because that's what they all deserved in the end. So I felt like that was happening no matter what. Now, Gandolfini could have been in the prequel because he could have been like, a dad to, himself or something. They could have figured that out.
Yeah.
But he was never – that Sopranos movie was never happening. And when they finally did do the prequel, everybody says it's a piece of garbage. So it's
not every –
they're saying there's no connective tissue whatsoever.
Yeah, not everybody, but it's mixed. And I haven't seen the whole thing. I watched like the first 10 minutes, and if it didn't grab me in the first 10 minutes, then I don't know why.
Well, that's a problem. If you didn't want to sit through it, it can't be that great.
But I have to say this. It's like
you have more time than anybody.
Oh yeah, I've got no life, Russ. Thanks. No kids, no life. Thank you. I may as well just end it right now. No, but this is the thing. You would think, okay, I'm Italian and Sicilian, that I would just gravitate toward the Sopranos. I watched it in passing. It was never like appointment television for me. I was more a fan of like Deadwood than I was the Sopranos. So
I think the Sopranos for like the first 3 seasons was better than Deadwood. Then I think Deadwood as a whole overtook it.
Yeah, it's so much better. And people say The Wire was better. I never watched The Wire.
The Wire was really good. The funny thing is like I don't like Westerns, but I really did like Deadwood. The Wire was very good. I don't think it's like the best show that's ever been on TV, but it was very good. Now,
okay, I want your opinion on this because I was telling Russ that my mother, who is 89 years old, is like one of these people that if you can save a penny,
right,
you save a penny. She's like, I can save 50 cents a gallon on gasoline for my car by driving 20 miles to a local supermarket chain that has gas stations to save the 50 cents a gallon. The thing is, she's driving 20 miles to do it. So the 50 cents that she's saving for a 10 gallon, which is $5, she's probably wasting in gas driving there and driving back.
Well, depends what kind of car she has. What kind of car she has?
It's a Hyundai. It's just, it's a
Hyundai. Okay, so gas mileage pretty good.
Yeah, but see, this is the thing. I know a bunch of people who I worked with when I worked at a bank who would drive 45 minutes away to the Indian reservation to buy gas at a discounted price.
Right.
And, and in Western New York, like the Indian reservation was up in Niagara County near Niagara Falls, or if it was down the south, it was never conveniently close to the city. Now, and so I didn't understand why you would drive 45 minutes out of the way unless you were a smoker and you're buying cigarettes. That
Funny,
you
my
hear,
my dad was very much along these lines. We had a diesel. Well, I lived through, and you guys, we all lived through the '70s gas crunch.
yeah,
And you know, when you had that, when it used to, you can only get gas on odd or even days depending on your
Yes.
Yep. And there was that massive line. Yeah.
My dad had to have one license plate, one different odd or even license plate on each car. Remember, that was a big thing. Like, we went and got a license plate, and he didn't like it because it was the same. It was both an odd number. Like we went and got the second car and had an odd number license plate on it too. So he sat there and argued with the guy. I'm not buying this car unless you guys give me an even license plate. You know, I remember that whole thing.
Well,
we were the first to get a diesel car. I remember, like, we had a diesel Mercedes diesel car.
They were noisy, those cars. A neighbor of mine had
They
one.
smelled really weird too. Yeah, but that was my first car, which sounds obnoxious because that sounds like they were rich or something. But it was the only Mercedes my family ever bought, and I got it when I was really beat up and old. But yeah,
my dad went a step further. He would drive to a different country to get gas in the '70s. He went up to Canada where they didn't have the rations, and he filled up there. But the reason I bring this up is over the last few months, there is a casino in downtown Buffalo, and they've opened up a gas station right next to the casino, and that is considered on Indian land because the state of New York had to give them the land so they could do the casino. So now you can drive downtown Buffalo.
The Indians maybe gave up a lot too, but continue. Yes,
you can drive 10 minutes away and get gas for 45 cents a gallon cheaper at the Indian reservation that's downtown. Now that makes sense, but driving like way out to East Jahunga makes no sense at all.
Yeah, East Jahunga is a suburb of Chickawaga. I understand. No, I am. Maybe it's laziness or something like that, but I definitely care about every penny that's spent for sure. I'm really careful about not spend money frugalously or crazily or whatever you call it. I am frugal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way.
I'm not the kind of guy who, like you guys know, I'm not the kind of guy who just is like hoards money.
But the carbon footprint thing, like that's, like there is a sense to that, and Mike is right.
Yeah. But if you're old and retired and stuff like that, hey, why not give your mom the fun of making let your mom have the fun of going and thinking she's saving some money and having a good time. And it's just silly. She's getting one over on the man, Mike. You were raised by her. I'm sure she has some of that getting over on the man thing is in her that you must have as well. That's my psychological thought on
it. Thank you.
Here we go.
I wonder what we're going to talk about.
I wonder what we're going to talk about. All right, let's go. What's the crap? December. Yeah, no, forget it.
Wrong month.
Hello, Hockey World. It's Thursday, November 4th, 2021.
I'm Michael Agello, and you're not.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. This is the last time I'm talking about Jack Eichel until he actually plays a hockey game.
Yeah. And I'm Macklin. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com, and I forgot to bring my Jack Eichel shirt up. It was going to hang behind me. That's okay, because we know what we're talking about today. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you into the comings and goings of the hockey world. So don't yell at me for not finishing that. Today we're going to talk about obviously Jack Eichel, and the trade has finally been made. The long saga is over. He's going to get surgery, for crying out loud. Thank goodness. Why it took so long is beyond me, because this deal was on the table months ago. The Sabres. I guess it took Brisson. Brisson basically did two things this week, I think, to kind of help push this along. One is threatening some kind of legal action or some kind of thing by the end of the week if the trade wasn't made. We heard about that, and then also yesterday, I believe, and I told you this when it happened, that when the rumor comes out about the players being offered up by Calgary from Kevin Weeks, who is a great reporter and gets a lot of great stuff. And really one of the probably most underrated insider out there as far as rumors go. Kevin Weeks is. He, I said this felt like something that I've been involved in before, which is when an agent calls you up and says, this is what we're looking at with this. And, and you report it because that's your job. Somebody tells you that your job is to relay it to other people. And I know Weeks thought, Weeks was just doing his job. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, because it probably was on the table and it probably is all true. The fact is that Brisson wanted it out there, so we put it out through Weeks.
Well, Kevin Adams was asked in the media availability whether the report was true regarding Calgary, and although he can't talk about specific players due to tampering, he said that the offer of a deal from Calgary was, quote, not accurate, unquote.
Of course it wasn't accurate, because the whole world looked at it and said, well, if that's the deal, Buffalo should have taken that deal. But of course, that wasn't the deal.
Right. And the whole thing that because we have a group chat that we talk during the day. The thing that made no sense about the rumor, and I'm sure Kevin Weeks was told about this, and his job is to relay it, and he did. But the thing that didn't make sense about Tkachuk being included in this deal was the fact that Tkachuk was another situation very similar to Rasmus Ristolainen and Sam Reinhart. He was entering the final year of the contract. He was 1 year away from unrestricted free agency. There's been a lot of rumors about him wanting to go back and play closer to home, which is St. Louis. Yep. More than likely, he was if he had been traded and included in this deal, he probably would have signed the 1 year qualifying offer and then walked in free agency. Or what the Sabres would probably have to do is what they did with Reinhart and Ristolainen, which is trade him. And at a position where they're not in the greatest, they have the greatest leverage. But so okay, that was put out there, and maybe that forced Vegas to up their offer slightly. But according to what Adam said, he said that Krebs was on the table. That was the guy that they wanted. There was basically not going to be a deal without Krebs in the deal.
We'd heard about that, and we reported that over to the time.
Right, exactly. And I had a conversation with a reporter back before the draft. At the Sabres Arena and was talking to a couple of reporters casually, and Alex Tuck, and I mentioned it on the show a number of times. Alex Tuck was always mentioned as part of a Vegas deal because Alex Tuck is from Syracuse. He trains in the Western New York area during the off season. And what Adam said after the deal is that he was excited to be a member of the Buffalo Sabres, which I can count about 6 players in the league that could say that right now. He's one of them. So
that's
that goes a long way.
Oh, it does, and and people who like the area of Buffalo, tend to love the area of Buffalo, and that's the reality of it. Western Upper New York there is an area that people fall in love with, and if they're from there, they like. I don't
think it's the area. Honestly, truthfully, I think there's a lot of people. There's a lot of NHL players who end up settling in Western New York because it's close to Canada, and it's the fan base is great. The problem here has been and continues to be the organization where they operate. Jack Eichel going out the door said he was frustrated at the losing, and essentially, he was throwing his career away because the franchise was spinning their wheels. So, hopefully they're charting a more positive path. Russ, now you've got the accumulation of prospects like Quinn and Peterka and now Krebs, who they're sending to Rochester, along with Samuelson and Owen Power. There's a group of young players that they can build around.
I just watched Power Play a couple nights ago. He's their best prospect. He is their best prospect. He will play next year. He'll probably, start him on the third pair, but he looks great. He looks fantastic.
I've seen him play and just a little bit. I haven't seen him play live or anything, but. This question
wasn't live. This was on video. But as far as I should let the chat room bet which way I'm going to go, because half the chat room thinks I'm going to go say one thing, half thinks I'm going to go another way.
All right, let's let them do it. Let's let them do it. Then we'll come back to you for a second.
All right, go ahead. Let them do it.
What do you think, Russ? Give the chat room 2 options here. What are the options?
The option 1 is it's a fair trade. The option 2 is it was a bad trade.
Okay, so there we go. We'll come back to Russ, and you put in the chat room fair or bad, and we'll
let me give you my opinion, because they don't care what my opinion is.
I think they do. Go ahead.
I think for what if you're going to take for the Sabres organization's word that they were expecting to get 4 first-round equivalents, then this is a bad trade. But I always believe that was sort of a negotiating ploy to get as much as they possibly could. And I think, honestly, for a player who you really don't know what his future holds, let's just say this. I hope, for the NHL's sake, for hockey fans' sake, that Jack Eichel has this surgery and he's 100% and he comes back and he's a great player for Vegas. But you don't know. It's an unknown. And when you're talking about a contract of $50 million for the next 5 years, and it's a surgery on a neck, and you don't know whether he's going to come back and be the player that he was before the injury, I think that getting anything that was close to that price was a good deal. Now, Tuck is out until the end of the year, but he's got 4 years left in his contract. Krebs, I'll yield to Russ. I saw Krebs play at the World Junior. I think he's a really good prospect. I think he was unfortunately forced to play in the NHL maybe a little too early because of the injuries to Vegas this year. You get a couple more draft picks, which you can flip to get players. So, I mean, the Sabres are going to be one of the worst teams in the league this year, even though they got off to a good start. But I think they, just like the Ristolainen deal, they got a decent value for a good player. But and Vegas is in a completely different place than the Sabres are. Vegas is a now team. If when their window is 3 to 4 years, and once that window is over, unless they dramatically change their direction in terms of drafting and developing, they are going to be a disaster in 3 or 4 years. But in the next 3 or 4 years, they could win a Stanley Cup.
Okay.
All right. So
Anthony, I just want to answer this question real quick. And then Anthony in the chat room asked, did Weeks accelerate this deal with what he said last night? I'm not going to say he accelerated it. I'm not going to say it was Kevin Weeks accelerated or anything like that. I do think that this deal was inevitable this week, based on what we heard later, that this was going to happen. And I think that Weeks putting that out there definitely did put the pressure. I mean, listen, the reality here is that Bill Foley is Ed Snyder right now. Like, he's the closest thing we have to Ed Snyder in the NHL. He wants to win right now. He's an older guy. His favorite player, and I've been saying this all year. I mean, you guys know this. His favorite player is Marc-Andre Fleury. And when the Marc-Andre Fleury trade went down, the way it went down, I was told, and I said this over and over and over again, that the only way McCrimmon gets that trade through and Bill Foley allows him to make that trade is by saying that this guarantees we'll be able to have the cap space to get Eichel. Yeah,
you did say that.
We'll talk about cap space a lot later, but that's the one thing I wanted to throw in there. And so in the this is by the way. I don't know what you think of this, but okay. So
I say he's a new viewer.
Anybody who thinks Mike is a Sabres fan is definitely new. But we appreciate you watching, appreciate you joining the show. All right, so the chat room generally seems to think you're going to say it's a fair trade for the most part. Only a couple that said you think you're going to say it's a bad trade. But go ahead, Russ, give me your thoughts.
So I do think it was a fair trade. The only thing that kept it from being a home run was the fact that it wasn't a top 10 pick potentially, because they protected it. But before I get into the players, the top 10 part I was told was the reason they protected it is that's their only insurance against Eichel not being even close to himself and them having to deal with the contract and everything else. So that's sort of the bargaining part about that. So I get that.
So if they finish out of the playoffs and they get a top 10 pick, then I would assume the pick defaults to the following year.
Correct.
But then I believe there is no lottery protection.
No, then it's not protected.
Right. Okay, good.
But they're doing it because of Shane Wright and the fact that what if this doesn't work? Because there is always a chance it doesn't work.
Sure.
Krebs is a really good player. Mike saw him play the other night. He had a couple of good chances against the Leafs, but he's been yo-yoed, and he didn't get to play a ton last year. So we're talking about 60 pro games. He has a chance to be a top liner.
Not even 20 pro games.
No. Between the AHL and the NHL.
No, I checked it. It was 20.
I thought it was more.
No, I double checked.
Okay, so it's 20 something games. Well, I don't know where I got 60 from. So 20 something pro games. He needs to play for a stretch in the AHL. Even if he's getting 3 points a game, he just needs it to play on the top power play, to do all these things again before he gets introduced into the NHL. But he has got great speed. He's a really good puck handler. He does make things happen. He is a playmaker. You remember, he also recovered from Achilles surgery and came back from that equally as fast, because people, were a little worried, like, what's he going to be like after Achilles surgery? But end of the day, he was their best prospect, Vegas's best prospect.
Yeah.
He's not going to be Buffalo's only because they have Owen Power. That's the only reason.
He's their best forward prospect, not
their best forward prospect.
Is he ready? When is he ready, Russ?
I think fully ready probably next year. I wouldn't bring him up at all this year if I didn't have to.
Yeah.
But if they want to bring him up the end of the year so they can kind of prove their trade, fine.
I think that's what
he already burned his rookie.
It's close. I think he went to 9.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he's already he played. He played 4 games last season, and he played 9 games in the NHL.
Yeah,
so he's already burned the first year.
So there's no reason to keep him down for that purpose. At least.
No, there's no reason to keep him down for that. Now, as far as Tuck goes, I think Tuck when healthy, is between 25 and 30 goals a year. Depending on the team, second or third liner. Krebs could be a first liner, but he'll definitely be a second liner. And so you have to look at it that way. It all depends on the team and the opportunity and who is on it. So it's a good trade. I mean, and the first round pick thing, I want to bring that up because, you know, I'm not ready to say whether it's a strong draft or not a strong draft, but for people that were, you know, because I got texts and whatever, people that were saying, well, Theodore, they didn't need Theodore because they could just draft a defenseman. I could tell you that there's probably not a defenseman of Shea Theodore's quality in this year's draft.
And it's all about now for the Vegas Knights. I mean, you draft a defenseman, you're talking a couple years away.
Yeah, well, it could be as long as 2028. That's one thing. But the other thing is, I don't know if there's anybody at Shea Theodore's quality in the draft. So, you know, based on those two things, Vegas did very well by keeping him there. Now, as far as the injury and the operation, so I looked up a recent UFC guy that had the operation, and it's on my it's on my timeline. And the interesting thing about it was, so after 5 weeks, he was allowed to hit pads and do things like that. So at that time, they were like, hey, he'll be back in November. So then in November, they're like, hey, you know what? Can't do it yet because I'm only like 85% healed, and they want me to be 95% healed. So we have to wait. And now we just had another update. Hey, I'm going to be fighting again in 2022. And this is why I'm cautioning even, you know, anybody who's getting any kind of medical advice that it could be he could make it for the Olympics and people are putting it out there. I think it's really iffy and chancy because A, you don't know how quickly it's going to heal for him because it's different from person to person. And B, you don't know if there's going to be a doctor that would actually clear him because clearly the UFC guy could not get clearance from a doctor based on the healing process. And so that is the part that I think is being most overlooked in this.
Yeah. And I heard secondhand about the comment from Mike Johnson, who does commentary on TSN, who said that the surgery that he wants to have, and one of the reasons the Sabres pushed back on it was it may not be conducive to playing a contact sport. Now, I mean, I don't know what's more of a contact sport than UFC, but, you know, if you're talking about constant hitting on your neck and back and shoulder, that might be the reason why the Sabres were so in favor of the fusion surgery. That has to be that is something that mitigated the value of what the Sabres could get in return, because you're not only talking about an injury that there's a lot of questions about. You're talking about $50 million over the next 5 years, and that's another reason why the Sabres maybe didn't get as much as they were hoping for, because they were intent on not retaining a dime in this deal, and they were able to not do that.
Well, that's true, and that's something we need to discuss now because the Vegas Golden Knights didn't get rid of any salary here, and at this point, are over the salary cap, correct? I mean, like basically how this plays out.
Well, okay.
Mike, you're our best cap person we have here.
Well, okay. Elliot Friedman talked to Eichel and said that, could it be a Kucherov situation where he's out until the end of April and then comes back for the playoffs? And Eichel apparently laughed at that and said, more than likely I'll be back after the Olympics, so February or early March.
Right.
So in that instance, and I don't know what the exact date of the trade deadline is, but I do believe I think it's in late March or early April, because the end of the season is at the end of April. Ross, look it up see if you can find out the trade deadline. But if that would mean that when Eichel is back, because right now they only traded out an entry-level contract in Krebs and and Tuck, who was making, I think, a little less than $5 million. They traded out about $6 million in cap space. March 21st. Thank you. And there's about a $4 to $5 million difference. Now there's all prorated and things of that nature. I get that, but when it comes to at that point, and Stone is back, and Carlson is back, and Pacioretty is back, and then Eichel is back, you don't have the room. So that means you're probably going to have to move somebody out. And I don't know who that would be. It could be a Dadonov, who we mentioned before, because they brought him in, and I was questioning that deal because but they're going to have to make another move to become cap compliant, unless they're unless they're willing to trade somebody off and get like somebody like Arizona to take on Dadonov, and that means paying another draft pick to get them to take that guy on.
And just to give you a variance on these things, like Johnny Red in the chat room said, he's had 3 discs done and he can't even start therapy for another 6 weeks. Like, you don't know once they're in there what's going to happen. You don't know a few weeks after it's done how the healing is going. All these things, like what Jack Eichel is giving, is the absolute best case scenario. Nothing goes wrong. Yeah. Everything's perfect. The cryo chamber works. You don't know.
You don't know, and then it's it's risky for. I mean, there's obviously this is risky. The Sabres were afraid of this for reasons. The risk is there, and for people saying that if we say this is a fair trade, that we're insane. I mean, the reality is this. I mean, I've talked to lots of general managers, at least 4 I can think of, that all wanted to go after Jack Eichel, but they all said the same thing, and that was that how can you go after him until you know if he's okay? And the reality is so this reason we're saying this trade is good because I mean the Vegas Golden Knights did that. They went after him without knowing he's okay.
Right. There's a risk involved.
I mean, this is not, you're not getting 100% of, if you're getting the guy who was picked right after McDavid and has, in the first couple of years, like Mike said, there was incredible stuff there coming out of him. That's one thing, but they're not getting that guy as far as they know. They might, but to give up, your best prospect, give up Tuck, who is a really solid role player for them. I mean, basically, they only have 7 players now. They only have 7 players left from the team that went to the finals.
Listen, heck, they only have 2 first-rounders from their entire first-rounders that they've ever picked from the start of the franchise,
right?
Which is incredible. The other thing, too, Ek, though, what did you say, Mike?
It's only been 4 years, and they had 3 first-round picks in that first year, and all of them have been traded.
Right.
Yeah.
Cody Glass, Brandstrom, and Suzuki, all gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you look at it. The other thing about it is, too, from the Eichel going there perspective, is there is going to still be an adjustment for him. He's going to have to move there. He's going to have to rehab there. He's going to have to – there's going to be a lot of things askew here.
Yeah. No, there are. It's got a long way to go. And the other thing is –
and he also – this was the other thought. It left me out back. He also has no move. And so, like, if people don't think this was a fair trade, what do you think would have happened in July after the no move kicked in?
Yeah, if it doesn't work out for the Knights for some reason, if for some reason his contract, he doesn't come back at 100% or comes back at 70 or 60% or whatever, and isn't the same Jack Eichel, the Knights are in trouble, like serious trouble. This trade really puts them under the 8 ball. And watching the other night, I watched that Toronto game against the Knights, and I know they have a lot of players that are hurt, and we all talked about that. There's a ton of players that are hurt on this team, right? But there's also something that I felt like even going into the season that this team had like lost its mojo a little bit. Like it just felt like that and I think that the timing of this trade comes on that too. I could very easily, if Bill Foley is what everybody tells me, he's the Ed Snyder of this. The current Ed Snyder.
No question about
that. He plays off the mood of the team. He plays off the mood of the fans. If things aren't going well, then he wants things to change right now. You got to make changes. We got to fix something. I think that I really can see that this was a move that he said, you know what, we've lost something here. We got to go big or go home kind of thing.
Well, I mean, honestly, I think the Vegas Golden Knights have turned from that lovable team that was the expansion team that made the Cinderella run with the lovable Marc-Andre Fleury into 3 years later being the evil empire, being the West Coast version of the New York Yankees or Boston Red Sox in baseball. They've spent massive money. They've traded tons of. I mean, Russ, you remember the '80s when the Yankees traded Jay Buhner for Ken Phelps and all these young guys. Gave up Willie McGee to the St. Louis Cardinals for nothing.
That Danny Tartable.
Right, and Steve Kemp and Ken Griffey Sr. and all these different like these sort of short-sighted bad moves that they did because their owner was such a win now type of guy, and people forget that the only way that the Yankees became a dynasty franchise again was when Steinbrenner was banned for 4 or 5 years, and they built through the draft, and that was the core of the group that won 4 World Series. In this instance, Bill Foley is basically operating scorched earth. It's like, okay, get Pacioretty, get Stone, now get Eichel. Now we've got our set. Like pay through the nose for Pietrangelo. But what he's doing is, in response to that, the GM and the president of that team have had to trade off the players who got them to a Stanley Cup final.
Just think about it. Yeah. Other than Tampa, teams that lose in the Cup almost never get back. So the odds are they're not going to get back as good as we think Vegas is. Yeah. And then you have to look at the other side of things.
Yeah, I mean, they've gotten to conference finals. They've been a good team and a talented organization, but you're getting to the point now where, again, I use the Tampa Bay Lightning after the missed season of 15 years ago, where you've got all your investment in 3 or 4 or not 5 players: Eichel, Pietrangelo, Theodore, Pacioretty, and Stone. And if those guys are hurt, or if those guys are not playing well, you're screwed because you don't have enough secondary players to. I mean, that game.
Just think about it. This is how fragile hockey is, right? And how amazing Tampa is. I was at the game where the Rangers think they can beat Tampa, get back to the Cup. Ryan McDonough tries out his foot on the ice. It doesn't go. He doesn't play. Tampa beats him. Tampa gets to the Cup. Like, that's literally how close it was for them. And then they never got close again. Like, that was it. Like, that was – so you don't know if you could even get back there again. Even the Capitals haven't gotten back there again, and they've been trying to rebuild every year to do it. Like, it's very hard. Pittsburgh and Tampa are the exception.
Sent me this really interesting article. This is a source that is very connected to Foley and the Knights in general. He said, now LasVegasSportsBiz.com, which is it's called Las Vegas's premier news site covering the convergence of sports business and stadiums and politics or whatever. That's I don't know how many of those kind of websites there are, but this is the best one of those. There's a writer on here who wrote an article that just came out last week that says, has the golden magic worn off? Fans notice lots of empty seats towards the end of the close of the Vegas St. Louis Blues game at T-Mobile Arena Wednesday. And it basically gets into this article, I just read a little bit, that it's just not quite the same. The magic is worn off. The honeymoon phase is over. Employees from within the organization have left. Some public and some not so public. Things are just different now. I still hope for success in bringing a cup to the Vegas with the players we have. The luster is worn off. It's really there's no buzz around the team anymore. Fleury was traded, and the whole aura of the team, from a fan's perspective, went flat. Not all fans, of course, but the players appear to be playing with no interest. Injuries, ticket prices, although extremely cheap near game time, have a hand in it too.
No, but that's a big one. Their tickets went up a lot. Somebody sent me a notice on that, and their tickets went up a lot. Yep.
A fan wrote, did not renew tickets for this season because of Vegas's lax attitude in helping stop the pandemic. Mass compliance and enforcement is a joke in the arena. Proof of vaccination is needed to attend large public events. By the way, I bought Raiders tickets instead. It's interesting. So I think what you're seeing is Foley's looking at this and saying, okay, we had that unbelievable success from the very beginning. Things are great, but we have to do something, and this is out there. And I think that the fact that Vegas has had this kind of start they've had, he's rolling the dice here, and I personally love it. I always love it when owners do this. I've told you that before.
Mm-hmm. You've mentioned that.
I'm a fan of going for it, and May draft picks be damned, whatever. But just because the thing is, as fans, you want to always give it a shot. The Flyers have definitely been that way for most of their career.
But here's the difference, because we've battled about this over the years, Zach. Yeah. It makes sense for Vegas, who has already basically gone all in on Stone, on Pietrangelo, on Pacioretty, to trade the remaining 1 or 2 prospects that they have and say, okay, where's our weakest spot right now? We're weak up the middle. Okay. Best case scenario, Eichel comes back in March and April. He's our number 1 center. Carlson's our number 2. Chandler Stevenson's our number 3. We're solid up the middle. We have a really good chance of winning in the West. That makes sense. Columbus selling out to get the players that they did at the deadline just to make the playoffs when they weren't a Stanley Cup contender, or Toronto a few years ago trading draft picks for Brian Boyle and Thomas Plekanec, makes absolutely no friggin' sense.
Yeah.
When you're Vegas, it makes sense. When you're Toronto or Columbus in the situation they were in, that's just stupidity.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, listen, I'm not. They're totally different scenarios, obviously. So
sure. No, but even like if we go to history and just look at trades that a lot of pieces for a superstar, even Eck, I believe, other than forgetting financial Eck, we're going to forget about the financial impact. But the Flyers lost the Lindros trade in the end. They did. They got a building built, and I get all the money they made. That's all fair.
Yeah.
But as far as the trade, they lost the trade.
No, and obviously, I think Forsberg and Lindros are. Forsberg Forsberg was a better player than Lindros in the end of the day. There's no ways about that. They're both Hall of Famers. They're both excellent players. But Lindros' injuries and Forsberg had a better career, and Forsberg won cups and won a cup and all that. So yeah, I mean the attendance dip. There's an attendance dip this year. The last three crowds. This was written. And this is another article. Now this is coming from the Vegas Times, I think it is. Yeah, right. Okay, so in the article, this is 5 days ago. Why are there empty seats at T-Mobile Arena? It's complicated. So this is and they go into the whole thing about
we have to be careful. We have to be careful there because honestly, there are empty seats at Scotiabank Arena.
There are everywhere, and I get that.
It's COVID. It's economy. It's a lot of different things.
But they've averaged 22,000 this year. It's
a combination. I agree with Mike. It's a combination, and I want to, mention to the chat room that for this trade to be successful, it doesn't mean that Vegas has to win the cup. It means that Eichel has to be back to being a 90-point guy a year.
Correct.
That's what it means. And if he is, then they're going to win the trade. But that's still an if. Right.
It's a big if, and I mean, we're seeing drop-offs everywhere. You're right about that. But I think that at the end of the day, it's going to bring a lot of excitement to the Vegas Golden Knights. Now the question is,
it will bring excitement.
Are they now a favorite in your minds in the West? Does this bolster them into a favorite status?
They have to make the playoffs first.
I know they have to make the playoffs.
No, and that's why I can't. Okay, tell me in 6 weeks when Stone and Pacioretty are coming back where they are in the Pacific. Now, remember, the Pacific is the only division that I thought the Edmonton Oilers could make the playoffs in because it was so damn weak. And Edmonton right now is what, 9-1.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was very strong.
Yeah, so by connection here, if Vegas can stay at 500, then they can beat out the LAs, the San Jose's, the Anaheims, and they have to beat one or two other teams in that division to get to third place. And if they can hold on and stay within striking distance, and then get Pacioretty and Stone back and Carlson back, and then have Eichel come in there in March as basically like a trade deadline acquisition, and they have a chance.
It's going to be hard though, and I'll tell you why. I'm watching some of that Leafs game, Mike. Leonard was making good saves, but
Leonard's not the problem.
Leonard didn't have any kind of defense in front of him from forwards or from his defense.
No. Mike Zeisberger referred to them that night as the Henderson Silver Knights, and that was really accurate because when you're playing Michael Amadio, who you picked up off of waivers, and Jake Leschyshyn, I mean they're really scraping the bottom of the barrel.
And remember, that where they show up as an expansion team is probably more evident in their farm system,
in their depth. Yes,
I mean that's where you really see that this is an expansion team still. That they're still a young team.
I said to Russ, it's like, okay, they've been able to hit home runs on guys like Zach Whitecloud, who was a free agent who they signed. Yeah. But if you look at what's going on in their minor leagues, they really don't have any they really don't have anything to really tap into in terms of guys you can call up that can really help you. I mean, they might be able to help in a fourth line situation.
No, I think they have depth guys you can call up.
Right, Sven. They could call up Sven Barchi on a.
Yeah. They have those kinds of guys. But my big problem with them, Eck, is what I mentioned to Mike. They don't have any guys that have top line ability. They don't have any defensemen with top pairing ability. Right. They thought Brandstrom was going to be that. I never liked Brandstrom, and he's not going to be that, and he's not going to be that somewhere else. But they don't have it anywhere in their system. So what you see is 80% of what they're going to be. They're going to have some players come up for sure, but it's not going to be like what it could be. And they're down players more than most teams anyhow because they didn't keep a lot of players the first couple of years.
No, and when they're healthy, when they're healthy, they'll obviously be better, and obviously adding they have now a number one center. They have not had their entire time they've been there. Really, they have been a really legitimate.
But it looks great on paper right now. We don't know what it's going to look like.
I mean, if you add Eichel to the team that was playing last year in the playoffs and say, okay, Eichel's in there, and obviously you have to take Tuck out, but you add Eichel in, and that's really all you have to do because none of the other players are really involved. Then this team is definitely a lot better. They get a lot better from that. But
and listen, I'm not going to be shocked if we start getting reports like, hey, we expect him back this time, and then, hey, looks like this time right now it looks like the playoffs, and maybe he doesn't even start the playoffs. None of that would shock me.
Yeah. No, it wouldn't shock me either. It wouldn't shock me if this did become, the situation that we saw in Tampa, if this is how they fix it. I mean, they don't have to fix it for a while, obviously, because they have this on LTIR, but there's some point at which they're going to have to fix this, right? So that's going to be really tricky if they get to the point where they have to make that move. Now, I'm sure they have something, and they must have had McCrimmon must have some way of doing it, or else he wouldn't have done this. He must know something that he can do to make this happen.
You would think.
Yeah, you would think.
I mean, again, I would like to think that teams are always that prepared, but in the NHL,
no, you're right. And here's the thing with McCrimmon.
We have seen teams fly by the seam of their pants. We have.
And if McCrimmon has talked to other team and says, hey, will you take Dadonov if I need you to take Dadonov for this and this and this, if he's talked to somebody about that already and has that in the back of his head that'll happen. The problem with that happening is that McCrimmon is more than any other GM has been accused by other GMs that I've talked to of going back on concepts like that, like where they've said, okay, in the future, will you make this trade? I remember Nate Schmidt. There was one team that thought that for sure they had a deal with Nate Schmidt, and it was reported that they had a deal with Nate Schmidt even. It was the Florida Panthers, and it was reported, and that was largely because McCrimmon said, yeah, we'll make the deal for Nate Schmidt, but then he decided he wouldn't, and that kind of thing, it plays out, it plays out over time, in a strange way. So he's got to be really sure of what he's doing here. But at the same time, he also has. I like that he went for it. I kind of think there's a way they can get under the cap. I don't know what that is. We'll see. We'll see over time. I mean, I think that this makes them a lot better. I do think that they're going to struggle to make the playoffs, though. If Eichel isn't back for the regular season, if they think they can do what they did with Kucherov and not, what Tampa did with Kucherov, I don't know. I don't know that they can make the playoffs without Tuck and without Eichel. It does change things. It definitely changes.
It does change things. Eck, I do have a little bit. It's not breaking news anymore. It came out about an hour or two ago.
Mm-hmm.
So Marian Gaborik retired, and while everybody has a joke about it, we do need to give him a little bit of applause, because when he first came into the league, he was something, man. And even when he first went to the Rangers, he seemed to have refound that for a few years.
And you have to say that for that window, when he got traded from Columbus to the Kings, he was important to the Kings for that second cup. I think it was the second cup run.
Yes, he was important for that.
Yeah, but then he signed an extension with the Kings, which I was baffled at, because he had all these injuries. And really, at that point, he became a cap casualty, and somebody ended up on LTIR and passed around the league. He went from LA to Ottawa to Tampa Bay, and basically he was just a way of tapping into LTIR, which, it's a shame, because he was a great player for a time.
He had a great shot. When he first came into the league, he was exciting. Then when he got it back on the Rangers, he was exciting. Like you said, with the Kings for a short time, he was still good, but he was a fun player to watch. He was. You had to watch him on the ice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He definitely was. He was by far the most, until Kirill now, the most exciting Minnesota Wild player we've ever seen. He has definitely been.
Yeah, I mean, Kaprizov is the guy now after him that is the most exciting Minnesota Wild player. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Wild have not had that kind of player that often, and Gaborik, when he was on, he was on with the Rangers, even, wherever he was, when he was on, he was a force.
Yeah.
I watched a couple of games last night I want to talk about a little bit. I watched the Predators Edmonton game. Really pretty much from beginning to end.
Why would you do that to yourself?
That was it was actually because the Oilers are fun to watch right now. I mean, how can you get away from a team that's scoring at 50% on the power play? I mean, they're crazy. They're crazy good. And
Mike's going to tamp it down.
I know. Koskinen is a mess. There's no question about it. And even in that game, he was a mess. There were a couple things in the Predators last night that I liked too, and I was surprised because the Predators are coming off they had 4 wins in a row and going into this game, and I was a little bit surprised that they were doing what they were doing, because I think we all kind of thought they were going to be among the bottom teams, and
reality struck.
Yeah,
I mean they still could be among the bottom teams, but in that game, they were way better than I thought they'd be, and I even liked their backup goalie, they had last night. Oh gosh, give me a second. Conor.
Just to answer Bill C. while you're thinking of that, I said yesterday, but he wasn't on the show. Marion Host is not coming back now that they're going to retire his number. That's off the table now. So yes, I'm giving up that.
Right. I'm trying to remember.
Conor Ingram was.
Thank you. Conor Ingram played last night, and
he did. Okay.
And remember Conor Ingram spent a lot of. He was in the program.
I remember they were hyping the hell out of him.
Yeah, he was in the Tampa organization and the Florida organization for a while, I believe.
Yeah, and then spent 90 days in the rehab program.
Yes.
And this was his second NHL game, and there was a couple saves made last night that were pretty fantastic. I can see this guy. I can see this kid has some future in him. I mean, obviously, the Oilers got the better of him, but he stoned Hyman on one of the better saves I've seen in a while.
Okay.
And I was also, the other thing that the Predators have going for them right now, which is really fascinating, is the reemergence of Matt Duchene. Matt Duchene looked really good last night, and it's interesting to watch. It just baffles the mind to me, that a player can be this way, that he can be so awful. He used to be pretty good player. He used to be considered for Canada Olympic team and stuff like that. That was his level. Then he falls off to nothing for a couple of years, but last night, impressive. I mean, he was really, really impressive, and they have they're still a feisty team. I think the Predators are still going to be a team that's going to have to be reckoned with a little bit. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but I think that they are better than people realize. And Edmonton they have it together. I mean, McDavid is at a different level than even McDavid's been at before. Watching him play just isn't. He made one play last night on that save that against Hyman. McDavid made this incredible play and / pass to get the puck to Hyman, where it was one of those typical scrums in the corner where when we were kids, they used to blow the whistle, but now they keep it going and keep it going and keep it going. And somehow McDavid comes out of there in a spinorama with the puck among all those players and just darts right to the net. Has 2 people hanging on top of him basically, and manages to slip the puck through 3 legs right to Hyman, who's alone. It was one of these plays holy cow. I mean, he's obviously fantastic to watch, but McDavid will do something every shift that just kind of blows your mind. And it brings back to me and then watching Draisaitl play, I thought to myself, I always think of Draisaitl I think of Malkin. I think of McDavid and Crosby and Draisaitl and Malkin. And I think to myself, who is better at their best, Draisaitl or Malkin? When Malkin was at his best, is he as good as Draisaitl is now?
All right,
I think they're different players.
I'm going to say it's Draisaitl only because we always expect more from Malkin, and that's unfair.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean Malkin now, of course,
No, even before he only had that one spectacular year.
Yeah,
if you think about it,
Crosby was hurt.
Right, but he's always great.
Yeah,
his rookie year, Malkin was amazing. I mean, I've seen Malkin at his top of his game. It's just
he's a force. Yeah.
Was nuts. I mean, you basically had the thing that both of them have going for them, and I've always said this, and that this always baffles me that Malkin doesn't do this, is that if they want to, when they have the puck and they're going into the offensive zone, they can either get a great scoring chance or draw a penalty every time they have the puck. They have so much strength that they're going to go straight to the net, and they're going to either have to be taken down or they're going to get a great scoring chance. Malkin and Draisaitl both share that. They both have that you can't get the puck away from them strength type stuff, and Draisaitl does it more often than Malkin did it. Malkin tended to not use that enough. He has that, and maybe it was the injuries or whatever, but he didn't go into the dangerous places as much as he did his first couple of years. I mean, his first year when Malkin came in, I mean, he was just. I thought he was right up there with Crosby, literally right away.
But Eck, I have to ask you. I saw Tolvanen's got 1 goal in 10 games. I mean, he had 11 last year. It does seem like goal scorers go there to die, and I'm not saying he's proven yet in the NHL, but he has a great shot, and it's just hard for me to believe they can't find a spot for him to score some goals. To me, that part's crazy. And I see Tomasino's doing well, so that's good because he's going to be a really good player.
Yeah. Yeah. Tomasino is
a really good player.
Is going to be a really good player. It's amazing what they get out of Cousins. They use him in a lot of situations. That I never thought Nick Cousins would be.
But Tolvanen, you got to find a spot for him or just trade him already.
Yeah, I don't know. But I really thought that.
Yeah, but they're probably fearful, Russ, of trading him, and then he goes someplace else, and he's going to be, and then he'll end up being the player that you think.
Listen, I know, but you can't always be fearful of that. And Kevin Fiala is a story of that. But
right, and see, I think that's just like the whole Eichel situation was a reflex by the Sabres of what happened with Ryan O'Reilly. I think that anything in terms of trading somebody on the part of Nashville is a reflex to what happened with Kevin Fiala.
Yeah. And then there's Puyarvi, watching Puyarvi.
I just want to say this to the Truth Is guy in the chat room. Go watch Ilya Tolanen's shot. I am not saying that everybody has a great shot. Like this guy has a great shot. And if you've seen it enough, you would know what I'm talking about. That's it. Yeah,
and then there's Jesse Puyarvi, and watching Puyarvi play now, he reminds me
of great.
He's
really
like
is
from the Munsters. Was it the Munsters or Lurch, the Addams family? I guess it was. He has that Lurch look to him to me, like Puyarvi. He's just big, and it looks like they couldn't make a helmet that's big enough for his head. Like no matter his helmet always looks too small on his head. He's just such a big character. And they talked last night about this like player that he's befriended in the area and been really great for. I mean, he's really, the crazy thing about him, coming over here, we all got this impression like, is he a prima donna? What's wrong with him? Why can't he adjust in North America? What's happening? All this stuff. And it just turns out, he's just like a kind of like a sensitive type character. And now that he's adjusted here, he's been like one of the nicest people in the community up there. They can't say enough things about Jesse Puyarvi right now.
I don't think it's his sensitivity. I think it was the fact that he was misused and in a way abused by the Oilers organization. You send the kid, honestly. Russ and I said this the year he was drafted. He should have gone back to Finland, just like Kotkaniemi in Montreal. He should have gone back to Finland. Instead, they played him as an 18-year-old in the NHL. They played him over 40 games. Then they send him to Bakersfield, for Christ's sake. I mean, it was handled stupidly by.
It was also a culture thing, not where it's bad culture in Edmonton, not that. Just that he's coming from a different place in the world and was having trouble adjusting. But you know what? Ken Holland handled this perfectly.
Exactly.
Because if he'd have traded him at the time he got there, when everything was falling apart, he'd have gotten nothing. Yeah. Nothing that anybody would ever talk about. Now he's actually got a really productive player, and he may even get close to living up to what he might have been, which is crazy.
I agree. It is crazy. And I do give Ken Holland a lot of credit, but I also have to say that, it wasn't from lack of trying. Like no one took a chance.
Yeah, but he didn't pull the trigger. Like Ken Holland calls everybody and does everything and looks at everything. But to me, it's like if you didn't pull the trigger, then you get the credit.
Yeah. And right. I mean, he didn't get what he perceived as equal value for Puyarvi. He was apparently willing to move him, but. What happened to Puyarvi, and this was not this part of the grand plan for Edmonton, is he said, I'm going back to the Finnish league. I'm going to play there for a couple years. Right. And he had a chance to develop. And by developing on his own, essentially, he turned out to be an asset that the Oilers could take advantage of. But it wasn't part of any grand plan. He was basically saying, I don't want to play for the Oilers anymore because they're going to send me down to Bakersfield.
Right.
Now, did you watch the Chicago game at all?
I did watch that a little bit. Yeah, I watched that this morning.
I do have a comment to make.
Yeah.
And this is where I think Colleton's in trouble. It's not even forgetting about the culture stuff. It's not his fault. Yeah. Forgetting about even the record. Just the misuse of Dylan Strome is going to get him fired.
Yeah. I mean,
that's going to get him fired.
The way he's playing Dylan Strome is ridiculous. I mean, they really need to either fire him or trade Dylan Strome, like one of the other two.
Well, they're trying to trade Dylan Strome, but
they're trying to trade him. But I think that's a mistake by trading. I think it's a mistake trading. Honestly, I think that he's got a lot of talent still. I think he still could be played in a better way. I agree with Russ completely. I mean, that team. The interesting thing is that you're starting to hear now the Patrick Kane trade rumors are going to start slipping in. My prediction is that they're not there yet, but they are definitely.
By next season, I think they're both going to be traded.
They're underneath the surface right now, and I think this trade deadline will be really interesting to see if they pull the trigger on Patrick Kane. I think
Kane and Taves. I think they're going to trade them both.
Yeah, they might. Kevin wrote an article last week for Hockey Buzz where he wrote, he talked to Kane's a Patrick Kane sweepstakes would be bigger than an Eichel sweepstakes. I don't know if I buy that completely, but I think that's going to be big.
Here is the key. Here is the key thing about, and when we talked about this a couple days ago, I wasn't looking at Cap Central. They have 1 year left on their contracts.
Yeah.
Right.
One. So at the deadline, it would be tough at the deadline because they're both making $10.5 million. But
Right.
for 1 year, for the Hawks to be able to retain salary and get a bevy back, from a team, would Jonathan Taves look great on the Colorado Avalanche? Like once Nazem Kadri walks in free agency, or once they decide not to bring him back, they need a number 2 center. Jonathan Taves for 1 year, like they did with Brandon Saad, would make
do it at the draft. That's when you'll get your most assets.
Would you see like if the Buffalo Sabres are still in this thing?
No,
It's impossible.
no, it's impossible for one simple reason: the Sabres are not a team that next year is ready to challenge for a playoff spot. Patrick Kane, first of all, I'm pretty sure he has a no move clause. And second of all, the last place he wants to go is Buffalo, his home.
No, but the idea is if he were agreed to go to Buffalo, I could see the financial aspect of him filling the place.
Yeah.
That's real.
Yeah, that's very real.
But I don't think he would waive. I don't think he would waive his no move clause to go to Buffalo.
We just simply don't know. You
don't know. I don't know that answer.
I don't know. I don't know the hatred of Buffalo, and I think that
no. It's okay. It's let me clarify. It's not a hatred of Buffalo. Buffalo's his hometown, but as we've known from things in the past, when he's been in Buffalo, a lot of things have followed him, and a lot of things that have been off the ice, things that have. But
that was a long time ago. I mean,
not a long time ago, and
not anymore. He's not.
You put that together with where he is in his career. He's still a great player. He still could be somebody who could be a great piece to add to a team that wants to win a Stanley Cup. But Buffalo is not there. Buffalo is rebuilding. So would Buffalo go out and sign him as a free agent the year after when they have a ton of cap space? Maybe, but not next year when you're talking about trading assets for him.
They have a ton of cap space now. I mean, it's like they have
to trade assets to get them.
So, by the way, Cam says in the chat room that Alexander Holtz got called up. That's a guy to watch. I'll be tuning in because he's a future sniper. I am going to tune into Alexander Holtz.
He gets called up to where? Sorry.
To New Jersey.
The Devils.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Right. That's right. I don't think Patrick Kane will end up in Vegas. No, I think that the reality is,
Okay, I'm going to make 2 guesses. The LA Kings.
Maybe.
And let's see.
He doesn't seem like an LA guy, though.
No, but I'm talking about Russ. They're looking for.
He's friends with Doughty, though. He does. I've heard that before. He's friends with Doughty, so maybe.
Philadelphia?
No, I don't think Philly. I could see.
I think New Jersey.
Look, I could see the Canadians. I mean,
I could see Canadians too. Yeah, I was going to say that one. I could see
that's what
Montreal.
I could see.
I mean, Montreal has to do something too. Like Montreal's in a spot where they have to make.
They need some excitement.
I have some ideas for Montreal.
They need some excitement.
Carey Price could be back soon, so that's something.
Yeah, it's going to help. But now, I guess Duran's out tonight, so against the Islanders. So that's. We have to mention Carolina. Like you talked about the game, but we talked a little bit about the game. But the fact that they're 9-0 now is really something, and the fact that Anderson is 8-0 is incredible. This is just a team. I mean, their defense has been so good. Their defense is their 6 defensemen are just so solid, and it's really kind of surprising, given the fact that they did give up, Hamilton, in the bowl process there. They gave up a great defenseman to get where they got to.
Just some minor news here. Russ saw Arizona play Philadelphia with Vejmelka in goal. Yeah. They have picked up off of waivers Scott Wedgwood, and I believe Hutton was hurt.
Yeah.
So
not look good in that game though, for the most part.
He was good. No, he had a good game.
I was surprised.
I agree with you.
Something here. I thought to myself, they have something here.
Yeah, I think they have at least a really good backup.
Yeah.
And if he could be a 1A, I just don't know. I don't know enough about him, but he played a really good game in the sense that he didn't have a lot of offense to offset the Flyers being in his end, but
Yeah.
For 2 periods, Arizona kept the Flyers on edge because they their speed was just a little too much for them. And then really a couple of big plays turned the game, which, again, probably happens to Arizona most games in the season.
Yep. Flyers Penguins tonight. We're renewing that rivalry, which is one of the better rivalries in our
I'll be
sport.
watching that, and then I'll be watching the Jet game. So,
But also,
he's switching.
Crosby has tested positive for COVID and is out.
Yeah, he can't play.
He won't be playing. He just played one game. He came back for one game, right, and that was gone.
Yep.
Could be back tonight though. Apparently.
Other games to watch.
I will say this one thing about that game. I'm pretty sure Mark Friedman will draw in, and I'm pretty sure this will be a very greasy, dirty game on the Penguins' end.
Yeah.
Other games to watch: Capitals and Panthers should be an interesting one.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody noticed it, but when the Capitals played Tampa Bay, Tom Wilson did his usual cheap shot bull crap on Eric Cernak, dropping down his stick on Cernak's arm and almost breaking his arm.
I didn't see that.
This guy has got to be stopped.
Yeah.
And Cernak, being the tough son of a gun he is, went right at him, which I couldn't believe it because I would have been like I would have acted like my arm got amputated. Yeah. That was a hell of a shot he did, and that was right at the end of the game. And the fact is, the league should have done something about it because that's what they were trying to stop years ago, stuff at the end of the game, and they didn't do anything to him.
I've said this before, and I hope it doesn't happen, but I get the feeling that what's going to end up happening at some point is some team, Wilson's going to pull some stuff, and some player is going to react by taking a Chris Simon baseball swing at his head.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to act like Cernak is a choir boy because he's not.
No.
But the fact is, when you do it at the end of the game like that, that is something that the NHL has tried to get out of the game. And the fact that they did nothing in this one is really what's angering a lot of people.
Yeah.
Other game, well, I'll be watching tonight the Tampa Bay Leafs game. Tampa Bay really, they're treading water right now without Kucherov, and it's going to be treading water for 2 months because he's out for that long. But they have enough talent. And I remarked this to Russ, and you can't tell me that there is not sort of like surreptitious stuff going on in the NHL. When Alex Barboulay was placed on waivers, Russ had talked him up. I'd seen him play in the American Hockey League. Good player, 22, 23 years old. Tampa Bay couldn't protect him. He was not waiver exempt. They placed him on waivers. He gets claimed by Seattle.
Yeah.
Seattle a week later places him on waivers, and Tampa Bay reclaims him on reclaim waivers. Now, they're not first in line, but everybody passed on him. Are you telling me that nobody, that Buffalo, that Arizona, that teams that are in trouble couldn't have used Alex Barboulay? And by the way, he's got 4 points now.
Of course. He's he's a good young player, an excellent prospect. Yeah, that part is crazy to me, but it's the way it goes.
And Anthony in the chat is basically, he's a Caps fan, and he's saying, well, the Buffaloes, the Toronto Maple Leafs are perfect, and that's the same thing. I've never seen Leo Komarov chop down with his stick on somebody's hand.
Not like that. That was really in this era. It was really bad.
It was bad.
So then don't give me that crap, Anthony.
Yeah, one more thing.
I want to mention Columbus, who beats Colorado last night, and
okay, go ahead, mention that.
Something about Columbus. It's like this team now they're
Laine's playing good, and Voracek's playing with Laine, who's playing good.
Great.
The bigger story here is Colorado.
I know Colorado just continues to struggle.
They played Jonas Johansson last night, which it's surprising he made a save, but I think they're 5-4-1. It's like
they're 4-4-1, and they are. Yeah, they're right at 500. Which is
4-4-1. Thank you.
I did want to mention something.
Yeah.
Well, Connor McDavid is the best skater we've ever seen in the NHL. He's technically not the fastest because people were mentioning Bobby Hull in the chat room. Bobby Hull, even when McDavid ran whatever miles per hour he ran in the All-Star game that we saw, Hull beat that years before. When they first came out with the jugs gun and they measured him. And it's funny because, is Connor McDavid a better skater than Bobby Hull? Sure. But Bobby Hull had that same speed. and he was scoring. What do you have? 600 goals in that range, 570, something like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, Bobby Hull was tremendous, and I just don't think people ever give him the credit for the speed part because he was just such a goal scorer that he's not like a dangler like McDavid can be, where he could just fake out a whole team. That
he wasn't called the Golden Jet because he played for Winnipeg. He was a Golden Jet before he went to the WHA because he was one of the fastest players in the league.
His toupee used to fly back in the wind.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Come on, put some Elmers on that one, Bobby.
I wanted to. People always wonder why I'm so good at predicting things, and and why I'm always getting everything right. And I wanted to show some things off. I wanted to show this off because this is what I peer into every day. I don't know if you can read this or not. The inscription on here says Eklund's crystal puck. Okay?
I see it. Okay.
This is I don't have a crystal ball, but I do have this crystal puck, and I've been using it for a while now. I don't see anything through it for tonight's games, unfortunately.
You have to get a turban like Karnak.
This is my crystal puck, and it's right here on my desk. So when I'll let you know if it lights up and we have anything.
Is that the size of puck that used to go through your 5-hole?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Sim Saladim.
I like it. It's nice. It's solid, and I appreciate the people in Canada who sent it to me. All right, remember, folks, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Enjoy the games tonight. Lots of games tonight. We will talk to you tomorrow. We'll actually have Hank on from Buffalo tomorrow. So
okay.